Mr. Castresana, so how would you evaluate Ukraine's anti-corruption efforts so far, and what needs to be done to make real progress against corruption?
I am learning, so I am beginning to understand the effort that is being made since Maidan until today. I think it is work in progress. I can see, but it is a very incipient evaluation, some positive steps, some resistances, and this is the logic and the contradiction that you always find in these transitional processes. I think that some things have to be improved, some other things are working in the proper way, but I have expectations that the final results of this process will be successful.
Okay, well, let's talk a bit about this anti-corruption court, the idea that it should be created. Ukraine's prosecutor general has opposed the creation of an anti-corruption court. Instead, he proposes these anti-corruption panels in the existing prosecutorial system, in the legal structures that exist. Does Ukraine really need an anti-corruption court? What's your opinion on that? And how critical is it? And do you see progress on it?
I have not a clear idea at this time if you need a new court or you can use the structure of the judiciary you already have. But clearly, in one way or the other way, the important thing, the essential thing is having independent and reliable judges. So the problem is not probably formal this way or this other way, but the problem is substantial. Do you have reliable independent judges that can be granted the freedom to decide the cases of corruption as people is expecting, providing a deterrent effect because they will serve justice and show that justice is served? That this is what Ukraine, in a sense, is needing. So I was telling before, today itself, what Ukraine needs, in my view, is a demonstration effect. It's a turning point that established clearly that was permitted with impunity before will be not permitted anymore. So a few important cases where convictions are achieved and shown that the situation has changed. And this message being spread in all the society. This is what is really necessary. The way of getting this with this court or with a new court, it's actually, I think, secondary. The question is having reliable judges.
I think a lot of the public would agree with you that a demonstration is needed. A couple months ago, I think it was actually last month, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau published a report that showed what it's achieved, what it's done. And so far there have been 15 cases that ended with criminal sentences. But most of these were fairly minor corruption figures. Mm-hmm. And the public knows that corruption is a very, very persistent problem in Ukraine. So what needs to happen for there actually to be guilty verdicts, for there to be a significant demonstration of the effect of anti-corruption work?
Let me offer you, I don't know, I cannot tell you in Ukraine, but let me offer you the experience in Guatemala. For this demonstration effect, we had to bring to trial 7 high-impact cases, very important cases, not minor criminality, but high-ranking officers in the military, in the police, in politicians, businessmen, so people that usually are beyond the legality, and bring them to trial and get convictions in 7 cases. Mm-hmm. And then things began to change.
Okay. So earlier this year, Ukraine passed a law that requires anti-corruption organizations to declare their assets, just like civil servants or politicians. Many non-governmental organizations feel that this could be a political attack. It could be used to impose political pressure on anti-corruption actors. What do you think? Do you think that this imposes political pressure?
Probably yes. No, the question is not the difference between civil society organizations of human rights or anti-corruption groups and other members of the society. The question is between public and private. So public servants, public officers have some duties that obviously include transparency in their income, in their assets, in their property, and this cannot be demanded of private citizens whatever they are, businessmen or civil society organizations. So I don't think that these human rights groups or anti-corruption groups must have other duties different of the duties that normal citizens have. You pay your taxes, and obviously your assets are transparent for the tax revenue agency, but not public. It's a completely different thing. And if you are an NGO or you are a private company, you have to deal with some formal obligations about your taxes, about your accounts, and this kind of report for authorities is a different thing than making public whatever thing. I don't think that the process of demanding to civil society organizations the things that you are demanding to public officers will work, because it is, I don't know any precedent in democratic countries. The legal systems are different, and the rationale everyone understands. If you are a minister of the government, you have some duties before the citizenship that you have not if you work in a private condition, in a private company like an executive or a professional.
The struggle to establish an anti-corruption court, or for that matter, nominating auditors for the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, has been very difficult. It hasn't seen so much success recently. Do you think that this indicates that the authorities are afraid of the anti-corruption structures that they've created? And what or who do you think is the biggest obstacle to fighting corruption in Ukraine?
I'm not that familiar with the situation in Ukraine to give you a proper response, but in general terms, I would say this kind of changes always bring resistances. So when you bring a change in the sense of bringing more transparency and more social activity, participation of citizenship, there will be always resistances. So any change of this kind you bring will have people getting benefits and will have people suffering damage. These people suffering damage will oppose. And it is part of the logic of the functioning of any democratic society. The question is building partnership, coalitions that are for the changes that the society needs, and the changes will sooner or later come. That will be a political resistance, will be, always is.
You were actually proposed as one of the potential candidates to serve as an auditor of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau. And many people feel that the process of electing these auditors has become very politicized. Would you be willing to take on this role if selected, and to work and to do this work in spite of the political passion surrounding it?
I think so, because I have not any connection in Ukraine, so I have not any interest, I have no property, I'm not related to any political parties. The first authorities I met in Ukraine began yesterday, so yes, it can be done. And the resistances and the pressure and the lobby will always be present, and it happens everywhere. So the question is not to make a scandal, but say, well, I am here to do this, and I will do it, whatever the resistance can be. It can make it more difficult, it can take more time, but it can be done. And it can, yes, and I think this audit of the NABU is not a negative thing in itself. Any democratic institution has to be transparent, has to be reliable, has to be responsible before anyone. There is an oversight necessary in any democratic society, so it can be done. The question is doing it in an objective, professional manner, not with political motives hidden behind, and not with the purpose of destroying an institution that is just beginning. And the first information we are getting is that it's performing very well.